Georgia. And Ms. Grizzard, thanks for being with us. And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me today. Right now, I am walking my dog on the Chattahoochee River in Atlanta, Georgia, enjoying this beautiful spring day. There's nothing prettier than spring in Georgia. And I know you're wanting to know about Lewis and his works and his legacy. And I have been working with the publisher, New South Books, for the last few years to re-release quite a few of Lewis's works. And they're working on getting another book out right now, Tilly Dogs Always Bark at Night. And they have released My Daddy Was a Pistol and I'm a Son of a Gun. If I ever get back to Georgia, I'm going to nail my feet to the ground. They tore my heart and stomped that sucker flat. And my favorite, My Daddy Was a Pistol and I'm a Son of a Gun. And so that's some of the things that I've been working on lately. I'm not sure if you know that this is, unfortunately, the 20-year anniversary of Lewis's death.
Right. It was, I believe, March 20th, 1994, so it has been 20 years. And we really look forward to getting those books back out because I know a lot of people will look forward to purchasing those and reading them again. A lot of the older people in the Southeast really know who he is, and trying to let the newer audience, know about him. Such a great Southern journalist. And also, if you could just talk a little bit about, now y'all had just gotten married, you and Mr. Grizzard, and then he unfortunately passed away. Was that a couple weeks after you had gotten married?
Actually, you know what? Lewis and I married 4 days before he died in the hospital, and we had plans to be married for the last year of his life, and unfortunately, he was really sick.
Right.
And he was really sick in the hospital. And, we were together for 4 years, and I love to tell the story about how I met Lewis. I met him at Chop's Restaurant Bar and Grill back on my 30th birthday. And Lewis was always so funny and so witty and charming. He was actually on a date when I met him.
Wow.
And he approached me at the bar and said, he was really witty and he was quick. He had to work really, really quick because he said to me, if you want me to wine and dine you on the French Riviera, you better write quick because my date is in the bathroom. And she's either changing gum right now or flushing. And that is a quintessential Louis Grizzard. I mean, he was a born comedian and entertainer, and, living with him and being with him was a ever-changing roller coaster ride, if you will. We were together 4 years, not long enough, and we just had some really, really great times together. Now, you're at Clemson right now, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, one time Lewis and I were at a Clemson ball game together. Our whole life revolved around Georgia football.
Right.
And I remember that Lewis was not very fond of Clemson.
That was a big rivalry back in the day.
It was a huge rivalry. And I don't know if you're familiar with one of Lewis's jokes about Clemson. And I don't think I'll tell it because I have better faith than he did.
Right.
But it was a big rivalry, and Lewis, I think Lewis may have even gotten down on all fours and barked at the Clemson cheerleaders when we were there, right before we almost got kicked out.
But, and looking at that, too, also, actually, I was reading something where, now, Mr. Grizzard, his ashes were, I guess you could say, some of them were put on the field at Sanford Stadium at the University of Georgia for his love for Georgia Bulldog football. Am I right on that?
That is correct. He asked for his ashes to be sprinkled on the 50-yard line. And Stevie Nick, my business partner, was Lewis's business manager at the time. We went to see, we went to the University of Georgia, and we asked Ray Goff and Vince Dooley at the time, if we could do that. And, of course, they wouldn't give us permission. They said, we can't give you permission because every Bulldog fan in Georgia will be wanting their ashes sprinkled on the 50-yard line. So we broke into the stadium, climbed the fence, went out on the field, and it was right when they were removing the hedges to do what are the boxes called up top? I can't remember.
The sweet sky boxes.
The sky boxes, yes. And so they had taken the hedges out, and the lines were not on the field. And we got to the 50-yard line. Now, at this time, we had been discovered. They were coming after us. And we got to the middle of the field, and I looked at Steve. I said, Steve, there are no lines. I don't know where the 50 is. And he said, Dedra, throw the ashes. He said, Lewis will find the 60. That is a true story.
Wow. Well, that's I've got a quote here talking about the game of life is a lot like football. You have to tackle your problems, block your fears, and score your points when you get the opportunity. And most of his columns at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution were dealing with football. I mean, just you touched on it a little bit. Just talk about his love for college football. Being the Southeast, he did pick on Clemson, but they were funny, and also picking on Georgia Tech was a big thing too.
Oh, absolutely, he did. He picked on everybody.
Right.
Lewis had a little bit of love for Georgia Tech, and I don't know if anyone actually knows where the real hatred came in, but one of Lewis's best friends was Pepper Rogers, and Georgia Tech fired Pepper Rogers, and the way they did it was just a terrible thing that no one should have to go through. And from then on, Lewis had a real true hatred for Georgia Tech. But now the other teams, he just, he liked to poke fun. But he was definitely, as he said, bulldog born, bulldog bred, and when I die, I'll be, by God, bulldog dead. We did every Friday, Saturday, Sunday around Georgia football. Lewis would, it didn't matter where the game was. We attended every one of them the 4 years that we were together.
Wow.
And he certainly attended every one of them before me. That was his life. He loved his Bulldogs. One of the biggest fights we ever had was when Tennessee played Georgia, and I have him an orange and white polka dot shirt. And he offered me all the way up to $500 to change shirts. And I didn't, of course. The rivalry was big. Tennessee won. Lewis was furious with me. And I won't give you all the little details, but I will tell you that he left me standing on the curb in my orange and white shirt after the game in Athens and wouldn't take me home. And I began to realize he cared a lot more about it than I did.
Right. And talking a little bit more about the journalism aspect, being at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the University of Georgia, and it says Ole Miss here in an article done recently, kind of teach classes in the Grizzard style of writing, and his legacy is alive and well. And just talk about the legacy today, and I believe, is there any kind of scholarship at the University of Georgia in his name, or?
There is, and I don't know if you know this, but I have an actor, Bill Oberst Jr., who portrays Lewis on stage, and we've been doing it for 14 years. In fact, we have Bill performing this weekend in Cartersville, Georgia, and many different places, and the crowds are still selling out. So Lewis's legions of fans, are certainly still around. They still love him, and unfortunately, he hasn't been able to be replaced. I mean, the kind of writing that Lewis did was so honest and about human observation. He was hired as a sports writer, but he got to be a columnist because every story that he did was about people and things that he could see a little bit different than you and I, and certainly put it into words. Lewis loved writing. If he were here today, he would tell you he's a newspaper man. To me, I think of him as a master storyteller. He was always entertaining. But his legacy and his works seem to be becoming more popular because nobody's been able to come on the scene and replace him because of the speech police and the politically incorrect and what we can and cannot say today. I mean, that's the sad part of what's happening in our world. I mean, Lewis certainly is more needed today than he ever was. in the field of journalism, in the newspaper, in what's happening in our country. And I think if he were here today, he would be much more political than he was 20-something years ago.
Right, and it talks about the humor, humility, patriotism, and old-fashioned values, and his friends, being friends with the former mayor of Atlanta, Andrew Young. Just talk about, if you could, before we let you go, just his love for the state of Georgia. I'm from the state of Georgia.
Well,
I mean, what did he love about it?
I'm going to tell you about his love for the South and what you just said, the heritage in Southern traditions. I mean, Lewis felt like we were losing a lot of our heritage and our Southern traditions because of the, different melting pots that we have today. And he had a love for family. He had a love for small towns and riding trains and sitting around and telling stories, and just remembering your heritage and Southern values and traditions. I mean, he was, called the voice of the South. And, the day he died, I remember the headlines at the AJC was the night the lights went out in Georgia.
What?
And you have so many people today that are columnists that are saying that the reason that people don't read newspapers anymore is because the Lewis Grizzards of the newspaper world are gone, and they can't be replaced.
Right, I'd agree 100% with that, and he was actually in over more than 450 newspapers at the peak of his popularity. Just able to reach so many people, and you can touch on this a little bit. If you could just share maybe like a real quick one of your funniest lines from him, because every line you look up, I mean, if there's an audience laughing, no matter if it's making fun of your team or whatever. I haven't heard one where not everybody's cracking up. So.
Well, there's so many of them, and of course, if you put me on the spot, it's hard for me to remember one in particular. But, not a funny one is one of Lewis's, he used to say life. I love that word. In one of his last interviews, he said, I'm going to tell you what I want on my tombstone. And everybody was like, what? And he said, he just came out with this. He said, I told you I was sick. So, that was Lewis.
Right.
That was Lewis.
Right.
He could just make you laugh. The greatest thing about him, though, is he could tell these stories, so many Southern stories that were so great, and that so many of people from Georgia and all over the South really know. And he could tell them 1,000 times, and every time they were funny. It was delivery, and it was just Lewis.
Right.
When he says that dog will bite you,
with
something sitting on the fence.
Right. That's. Yeah.
We were in Greece together, and we were walking down the street, and we heard somebody come up and say, that dog will bite you. They were completely on the other side of the road.
Right.
I heard that. I was in New Orleans. When Georgia was in the
Sugar Bowl.
I don't know what it was. We don't know. Sugar Bowl.
Right.
And I was standing at the elevator. There was 2 or 3 people telling Lewis Grizzard stories, and I stood there. That Lewis was already passed. But I thought, do I tell him who I am? And I didn't. I just stood there and watched their sheer joy of the stories they told. And I just had somebody pick up a CD from me, the best of Lewis Grizzard for a funeral. Instead of church music, they played Lewis Grizzard.
Well, that is great. And actually, my dad always tells me a funny story. He was at the Auburn-Georgia game, and he saw Jim Fife, Larry Munson, and Mr. Grizzard sitting there. He said he always wished he had gotten an autograph or a picture or something. And you talk about, before his death, I read where 50,000 letters were sent to him when he had his surgery in 1993, if that just tells you anything about the love that people had for him. And then, obviously, you still have the Lewis Grizzard Memorial Highway right by Sprayberry's and Noonan, which is kind of fitting, too.
Yes, we do. And the museum is going to be opened in Moreland, Georgia this summer. And we've been working on this museum trying to get a permanent place for Lewis's works and memorabilia for a very long time. And that's going to be in the old historic mill in Moreland, Georgia. And also, too, if anyone has any, if they need to reach me, if they need questions answered, I have people email me all the time time about a particular column they remember being written, they can go to my website, lewisgrizzard.com. And a lot of people spell it Louis. It's Lewis, Grizzard. And my cell phone number is on there. My personal email is on there. And I am fine with anyone trying to reach me if they have any questions or, you know, if they have anything to donate to the museum. You know, anything that deals with Grizzard, I'm happy to take any calls or emails.
Right.
And that's, of course, where you can get product as well, books and CDs and tapes and whatnot.
Right. And well, we appreciate the time so much today, kind of reminiscing back, and it's great to hear that people are still buying the books and the audio clips and things like that. And it's great to hear that the books will be republished soon where we can still get them and keep reading them and keep laughing. So thanks so much again, Mr. Grizzard. We appreciate the time this afternoon.
Well, thank you. And I want to mention one more thing that I keep forgetting about because I'm of the older age group.
Right.
We now have about 15 of Lewis's books that you can download through Amazon, through Barnes & Noble, the Nook, Kindle, Apple iTunes. You can now download quite a few of his books. So they're out there, too, and that's really important for the younger people who are, you know, we'd like to introduce to Lewis.
Right. Well, he could always definitely make you laugh. I wish I could have met him one day, and I'm thanks for sharing some stories with us, some personal things about the Sanford Stadium and the Ashes. That is a really neat story, and just thanks for joining us and taking the time this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your walk with the dog out there in the great state of Georgia. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And that's Miss Dedra Grizzard. She was married 4 days before Louis Grizzard passed away, so we really appreciate her time this afternoon. And as Louis Grizzard once said, life is like a dog slave team. If you ain't the lead dog, the scenery never changes. So thanks so much to Miss Grizzard again, and we'll be back.